Thank you. So we'll be going over mostly anecdotal information, and that's because I don't have a sense of what those that are on the webinar. I don't know what your practice setup is or where you're located within your organization. So it's a little hard to speak to your specific situation. But in general, we'll be going over policies and procedures. And in the engagement model, which we consider part of our governance structure at our practice. Um, some of the benefits of a business architecture governance, benefits to the architects and to the practice of standing up practice governance is defining your practice policy so everybody knows what you do and in general how you do it and what they can expect, so the rules of engagements and the expectations are known. And then also, rules, I'm not going to say they're made to be broken, but you have to have some kind of flexibility. So identifying when rules may be different and why, and letting your customers, your internal customers or your external customers know when that is and why that is. So at the end of the webinar, the hope is that you'll understand the benefits of practice governance and be prepared to document and socialize the rules of engaging your practice. So we're going to skip over the agenda and go right into business architecture practice policies. So by definition, policies are guidelines, and you want to achieve certain outcomes. You have certain goals for your practice. So if you have guidelines, it makes it easier to have that process repeated, as well as when you onboard new business architects, whether they're from external entities or from internal promotions or opportunities. You have a way of describing to them and getting them to understand how your practice operates and how you achieve your goals. So our governance is managed by our team, but we do participate in a formal governance process for our division. Our practice is located within IT, and it is within the project management office. So there is a governing body made up of all of the different roles in in our division in the organization. We meet once a month. We go over whatever is on the agenda. If someone is making a change to their guidelines or their policies and procedures, we do submit that as something to be reviewed. Ultimately, we hope we have consensus that it will work for everyone, whatever that change is. But at certain times, we do have to protect our practice, which is kind of our mantra in some instances, and go forward with our practice policies and procedures, guidelines, irrespective of another department's issue with it, if you will, or disagreement. But we do strive for consensus. So the business architecture rules of engagement, that's kind of at the heart of our governance. How do you engage with each area of your organization on a regular basis? So because the way our practice is set up, we play two roles: the role of the business architect as well as I'm not going to say a solution architect, but we do determine for major projects the solution, or we investigate and document what the solution options are. So we do play several roles, not just the traditional or what you would consider a traditional business architect. So we have direct engagement with what we call business solution partners, and you can think of it as a business relationship manager. They're responsible for delivering initiatives on behalf of the business. So we have a very tight relationship with them. So we have a section in our governance about what do we do and how do we engage with that relationship manager or a solution partner. We have an engagement model section in our governance for how we engage with project managers, program managers, business analysts, our platform vendor, and our actual technicians, the IT department. And then we also have uh, a section where we talk about um, how we engage with those departments that may be secondary stakeholders or indirect engagements. So that would be someone, say, in a business area who is a participating stakeholder in a value stream. They may not necessarily be a directly engaged individual all the time, but they are indirectly engaged in the form of what we call assessments and discovery. Um, so hopefully that makes sense to you. In terms of your direct engagement, you can use your business canvas model that we talked about in webinar part 1 and 2 to determine, what is the inventory of engagements that you need to define by looking at your customer segments, what your relationships are, what activities and channels they're involved in. That will give you a good start as to even just ask the question, do I need governance around this relationship, or do I need to communicate to this department that I'm dealing with or this customer how what the rules are for our team and how we're going to engage with them. And
Hey,
just a reminder,
Maureen,
yes,
we have a question. Does the
sure.
PMO you report to support the entire company or just IT?
It's the corporate portfolio management office. So our corporate portfolio team actually administers the corporate budget for the enterprise each year for any projects or initiatives that are started. Any more, Beth? Okay. So just as a reminder, the key activities, customer relationships, your customer segments, your channels, these are the things that I was referring to on the previous slide from your business model canvas. So hopefully it gives you an idea of, how do you engage for example, the PMO. We recently were included in the PMO. We were in a different area. So the PMO was our customer at the time that we built our business model canvas. External customers would be our platform provider or vendors, or even our customers. That I work for a health insurance company, so our clients that purchase insurance from our company, those are external customers. So one of the things that governance provides you is it provides you with a way of setting expectations, especially for your customers. Customers should know what to expect. A lot of times we go into an initiative and we call it our discovery process to start talking to the business about what their goals are for an initiative. It's typically something that has already been approved from a corporate leadership perspective for funding. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the customer needs to understand I'm asking for this. What should I expect in terms of impacts across the organization? And they want to know, is that going to cost a lot? Do I need to add to staff? So on and so forth. So we assess with them through a discovery process what the impacts are to all the various stakeholders through the company. And then from an IT perspective, from a technical perspective, we request a ROM or a rough order of magnitude from the different technical areas so that the business case can be put together. So that's really high level. We don't have time to go into every aspect of what um, our the way we engage looks what it looks like, but our main customers are business leaders in various areas. So they know what to expect from our team. They know that we go through a discovery process. They know that we work with all of the individual departments or areas within the company and potentially vendors and platform providers to determine what the impacts are. Um, so our um, our model actually does change though, and I have something on the screen here. I don't know if you can see that, but we do change our engagement model slightly um, at the peak times of the year. So we have a planning cycle that usually starts in June, late June, and runs through October of each year. June through August, the business is presenting all of the ideas they have for the next corporate planning year, and they're requesting funding. So we have a different engagement model just for corporate planning, the corporate planning cycle. So we try to do a rapid assessment, not so much discovery. That's the longer process that we have in place. But we do have to make those adjustments so that we can get the ROMs and the business cases built in time for leadership review for the next corporate cycle or planning cycle. So we just went through that process from the first week in July, right after the holiday, and all of the ROMs needed to be in by September 3rd. Leadership will be reviewing all of the business cases and the projects and making a decision as to whether or not they're approved to move forward with corporate dollars for the next year.
Say,
So,
Maureen,
yes.
when does your fiscal year start, and when do people need to have their corporate dollars finalized?
The corporate dollars are finalized. The project portfolio and dollars allocated to them, we usually know what that is by October. However, the corporate annual operating budget is not, I don't believe, until December.
And you start a fiscal year in January?
I believe so. I mean, we usually publish our financial statements in April, so I believe, yeah, it's December or January.
Okay.
I mean, if it's important, I can find out. But
No, I'm just trying to, not all of us work in segments that start, amazingly enough, their budget years with the calendar year. So I'm just trying to give people an idea of your timeline of how far ahead you work to make these decisions.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's January. I have worked for a company where the fiscal year started in December, which really kind of threw a monkey wrench into a few things. But
Okay, that's so
but
just
that was a nonprofit church that I worked for,
yeah.
and their fiscal year started in December, and it was a little taxing.
Yep, just trying to help those joining in to figure out the timing of the planning cycle. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So then the other thing about your governance and your engagement model is you really need to let people know what it is. So publishing and communicating that engagement model is extremely important. Making regular updates to it is really important, especially if it's new. You may be figuring things out as you go. When we first started our practice, formally started our practice, we were updating our playbook or our engagement model, our charter as well. We were updating that on a monthly basis. As we worked through as a team and with our leader, how we wanted to engage or what we thought the business would accept. And what was best for the practice as well as for the business team. So these aren't prescriptions on this slide. These are suggestions. So we have a playbook, but it's part of a larger playbook. So the project management office or portfolio management office has a playbook for all of its different teams that anyone can go out to and understand what the rules of engagement are. So we do have our engagement model peppered throughout the PMO's playbook. We also utilize we use in our company, we use Team SharePoint. So we do have a specific SharePoint for different things like corporate planning or what we call exception projects. So if someone or an area in the company submits a project request outside of the annual planning cycle, we call it an exception. So we have an area on our team SharePoint where anyone can go out and find our assessments or our documentation on a page specific to exceptions or a page specific to annual planning. The corporate intranet may be a tool that you could use. And again, these are suggestions. It's not a prescription. Now, in another company I worked for, they use the Atlassian Tools, so Jira, Confluence, and there was another tool that we had, and I'm blanking on the name, but those might be options for where you may store some of your rules of engagement, your playbook, or your team policies and procedures. You need to have, at least we do, a schedule for publishing changes. Like I said, originally we were publishing all the time because it was new. We were developing the practice framework, but now we basically follow our larger governance team schedule, which is quarterly changes. So that is information, of course, that's available to all of our stakeholders. If they were interested, they would know that there's possibility of changes that will be made to our process or our policies and procedure on a quarterly basis. There's the forum that we have for announcements. So if something majorly changes, and you want to announce that before the actual publishing, or you want to socialize the change, we have a forum every Monday mid-morning where anyone can join from our division and listen to what the announcements are. And then education and training. So we do have, and I've mentioned this in other parts of the webinar, our company does have a business architecture overview, or this is our engagement model type of class that we conduct. We were conducting it quarterly before the pandemic. We've conducted it once since the pandemic in a virtual setting. But at this point now, what we've decided to move to is whenever a new staff comes aboard, we have hired someone who's managing our practice for us now. That individual will be performing the class or the engagement model overview for any onboarding or new staff coming into the division. One of the other things that we do is we participate in what we call our Tech Week. It's kind of a misnomer because we're not technical, but our division holds a week-long kind of like technology fair. And of course, because of the pandemic, it's virtual last year and this year. So we have a segment that we do, and we present some topic about business architecture to socialize our engagement model and our team to anyone in the company, because Tech Week is not, even though it's put on by our division, it's open to the entire company. So last year, we had an intern that developed a business architecture maps presentation, and he did a really good job. It's a video, and it's basically him using the theme of getting to the Philadelphia Eagles um, championship parade, and using business architecture maps to navigate all the traffic and the closed roads and what have you. And it really did work out right. Uh, it worked out well. So we did do that presentation at Tech Week. So that gave everyone a good overview of our team and what we do. This year, our new practice manager is going to be presenting something in our tool um, to showcase that business architecture needs information from the business to put into our corporate tool, our corporate business architecture tool, which we use Iris. And she is going to basically, and it's still forming, so I don't have a lot of information about it, but it's going to utilize some concept that rings true with our business to demonstrate how business architecture utilizes Iris to help them. So those are some of the things that we do for education, training, and what's important for us mostly is the change we're making with onboarding of staff. We find that whenever you hire new program managers or project managers or business systems analysts or anybody that participates in what we do, it takes away from productivity if they're not aware of what our engagement is. So we're trying to correct that. So the next thing that I wanted to go over is setting your own expectations. So we talked a lot about setting the customer's expectations or your coworkers or peers or those within our division setting their expectations of what we will do and how we will do it for them or with them. But set your own expectations, and that's just something that we've learned. Um, make sure your leadership agrees with the governance that you've put out. Um, because if you get into a situation where someone objects to something related to the way you govern your practice, your leadership, if they didn't agree with it in the first place, may kind of side with the other. I mean, if they think it's not something that they would have supported had they known about it, that could put you in an awkward position. So we always gain agreement from our leadership, or at least notify him of um, what we're doing and what we plan to do, why, and then if he has any kind of tweaks or changes or questions about it, we get that out of the way up front. The other thing is review and update it regularly. In a situation where things are moving fluidly and maybe changes in or we have a lot of changes in our organization in the last 12 months, leadership wise, department wise. They've combined things. They've combined companies. Subsidiaries are now in the core business. There's a lot of changes in our organization, and we have to adapt to those changes. And we have to adapt quickly to continue to be productive and also of the value, deliver the value that we've proposed. Um, be flexible. We don't do our process for the sake of process. We do make changes depending on the situation. So everything is contextual. We don't say we have to do XYZ because our governance states that in every situation. If you have a situation where you need speed to market or you need to get this done quickly because something else will negatively impact your company, we have to make adjustments. So, an example of that is we were notified this year of one of the companies that we do business, and it's a big part of our business. One of the companies we do business with is going out of business. And in order to replace what they do for us, it usually takes about a year and a half to onboard a new company to perform this function. So we don't have time to do a full discovery and walk through all of the different things that may be impacted and make sure we understand exactly what the business needs and wants. We already know what they need. They need to replace this tool. So we're foregoing a lot of the process that we normally, or a lot of the things that business architecture would normally do, and we're doing things in parallel, so that we can get this done quickly, because they will be out of business within the next year, year and a half. So the other thing is just be mindful of or set your own expectations that everybody is not going to follow the rules. That is something that we struggle with, because there are specific areas within our own division that feels as though they can bypass our role. And that's me trying to be transparent. There are, competing teams within our division, for whatever reason. I don't consider them competitors. I consider them collaborators. But for whatever reason, some teams believe they don't need the business architecture role in order to do their job, even though that's part of our divisional process and procedures. So we have to guard ourselves against that. And then, how do you respond to something like that? When you think about your rules of engagement, if someone doesn't engage with you the way you've laid out, that's okay. Um, to me, it's okay, then you don't get the full benefit. As long as it's something that um, doesn't negatively impact the end user or the business owner's project, we don't make a big deal about it. But when it does affect a business owner's goal, or say a delivery date, then we have an escalation process. Um, so we don't want to alienate our business stakeholders or our partners or peers. So we're really careful about what we escalate and what we don't. And then sometimes, when we find that one of our rules of engagement or our practice guidelines is being violated, we kind of look at that to see, well, are we being too stringent, or does this need to change in some way? So that's where we go back to adaptation and being flexible. Um, so that is, I think, about it. So basically, define your policies and procedures and set expectations of all of your stakeholders, your customers. Communicate and educate, and adapt as needed. And that's a
Marie,
wrap.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. We will entertain questions. You can either put them in the chat or the Q&A function, either way. And while we wait for people to type, I want to say I really appreciate your honesty that you can do all the governance and communication. By the way, I was really impressed with the amount of communication you do. I think that's sometimes where we fall down with business architecture practice is, how do we onboard people into what we're doing and get buy-in? And I really appreciate the multiple spokes you had to enter and get in. But like I said, I appreciate your honesty that even with all that, sometimes people
Yeah.
want to compete rather than collaborate. Not that we want to hear that per se, but it is affirming to say, like, I feel like I'm doing everything right and it still doesn't work. And sometimes you can do everything right. And it's still, even for someone like you, Maureen, who's been doing this a long time, you can't control everything. So I haven't seen, people are still hanging on, but I haven't seen any questions pop up. So it doesn't, well, there's one. Let me see here. On one of the early slides, there was a direct/indirect engagement.
Yep.
Yep, I'm going to let you get there and then I'll finish the question. Is it fair to summarize that as direct equals business, line of business managers and directors, and indirect equals support, meaning business analysts and project managers?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. hopefully that helps people out. Any other?
And just another comment, I don't think I made, but I did intend to make, so I apologize. The other thing about having guidelines, policies, and procedures is, for the most part, when a business team engages with your practice, they are actually experiencing something similar, maybe not the same, because each business architect has a style, and we don't try to dictate style at all. But if everybody's playing by the same rules, then the experience that the business has is going to be similar. And if it's a positive experience, it should be a positive experience with any of the business architects in your practice.
All
And
right.
one more point. I know there's companies that have communities of practice where they bring all of their business stakeholders together and possibly go over their reference models and enhance them. That's another area of direct engagement that would need to have rules of engagement or policies and procedures.
Okay. I'm going to just give it a one more minute. And while I'm waiting, just going to say, Maureen, we cannot thank you enough for the time and energy that you have put into this 3-part presentation that you've done for Metro State. And we need to give you a break now and we'll get other presenters, but I'm hoping that we will be able to circle back and use your talents and your knowledge again. So thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.